How's it going, Laser Bruce's up? I'm Sixkilla. Welcome back to Choices That Matter. And the sun went out. Our current decision is Dolores wants to take Moti from us to look after it, but I really don't want to give her Moti because he seems to be sentient now and alive. I said no. I closed the door before she could reply. Crank sighed, looking a little less green after his tea. She'll get her way, you know, he warned. She always does. I didn't respond to Crank. Etienne found me a little bit later while I was hunting for something to eat to keep me awake. Hey, I just found out something, he said, pulling me aside. Not only have I seen the symbol elsewhere, he said, flashing a sketch of the strange symbol in Sol's diary, but so have the others. What do you mean, I asked. I've been sketching the symbol from time to time, trying to figure it out. Miss Farah caught me drawing it today and thought it looked similar to a symbol she'd seen as a child, in an old Portuguese castle. Etienne glanced around me before continuing. I figured it was a coincidence, but Satine just told me she's seen it before on the wall of a ruined fort in a little German village, while on a mission not too long ago. Do I even know what she was doing there? Do I even want to know? Etienne gave me a wry look. Even if you did, she wouldn't tell me. In any case, there's quite a few countries that this symbol has been sighted on archaeological sites. Show it to me again? The branching path thing. Keep an eye on it, Tintin, and please be careful. I clapped him on the shoulder. I have a bad feeling about it. Don't worry about me, he nodded. I'll be fine. No being a hero while I'm not around to save you. Etienne laughed, a twinkle in his eyes. Wouldn't dream of it, he said, shaking his head. That's obviously your job. I was startled when Dolores' voice came over the jet's intercom. We're getting ready to land, people. Strap in, or be prepared for a concussion. I don't care which. I looked at the time on Moti's charging face. I'm not sure if it was quicker or slower than I thought. Your mental process has no effect on the distance traveled, teacher. Thank you, Moti. I covered Moti with my jacket again and went to sit with Etienne, ready to part with him once more. To my surprise, Dolores' landing was gentle and smooth. Maybe that was why I slept soundly through all of the earlier landings. Etienne smiled sadly at me. She's skilled. She'll look after you, he said reassuringly. Though I wasn't sure if he was reassuring himself or me. She's done so in the past, so I've got no reason to think it'll change now. Especially since she's been blacklisted. Dolores, Dagger, and Crank joined us in the main cabin, and Dolores surprised me by handing out cell phones to each of our ragged group. These should work on Russian and Chinese cell networks, she said, handing me mine, which helpfully had my name on it. Everyone's details are already programmed in, she continued. Phone networks everywhere have been patchy ever since the last time the sun went off. If you're having trouble calling, try your luck with text messages. I haven't been able to maintain a line of communication with the other Aetherite chapters, Wong said, looking at his own phone. In any case, Dolores continued, try to keep everyone updated of your status at all times, especially if things go awry. You don't sound confident, my dear, Petrus noted, frowning. Dolores shook her head quickly. Merely being practical. We're also refueling here, so if anyone wants to stretch their legs, now would be the time to do it. You got 20 minutes. I hastened to head outside, eager for fresh air after being in a crowded airplane for so long. Dagger was close behind me. Stupid tiny plane, she sighed. I used to fly much bigger beasts. More legroom. I laughed, nodding to her. The others joined us in a little circle, some of them with their luggage. Do you think we'll succeed? Chase Price asked, standing next to me. Save the world and get the girl? Or guy? Of course we will. On both counts. His smile widened into a toothy grin, though it looked more competitive than friendly. Well then, may the better team win then. He winked and clapped my shoulder with his hand. You want to make a bet on who gets it done faster, Chase? Satine asked, coming forward. Chase tilted his head slightly. You're on. I bet you 500 American that me and my team will find NASA's information before you and yours do, he challenged, standing up to his full height. Up the ante, she shot back. 1,000 of my team finds the cure for the sun before yours. Done. They shook hands, holding it probably for a moment longer than was necessary, before Chase backed away with a twist on his lips and the devil's look in his eyes. Let's hope Russia has the goods, Satine laughed, rubbing her hands together. I can't wait until he's in my debt. As the team wandered off, Sharon walked up and raised an eyebrow at me. Those two are up to no good, Sharon muttered before turning to me. Can I use Moti to call Chrissy? Moti's charging, I said, shaking my head. You'll have to wait until we land in Moscow. She frowned, but didn't push it. Soon Dolores was signaling for us to come back inside, and we all said our goodbyes before boarding the plane once more. Now's a good time to get some sleep, Dolores said, looking over the bedraggled group. Less people means more space to actually lie down. I nodded, already yawning, knowing I couldn't fight the fatigue much longer. Settling down on the couch with my head next to my bag and jacket, I closed my eyes. Wake me when we start descending. I was dead to the world before I could hear Moti's response. I woke to the sound of men shouting and rushing, and machinery being operated and moved. Yawning, I opened my eyes to see the door leading outside to the jet was wide open. We'd already landed. What time is it? I asked Moti, rubbing my eyes. No one responded. They stole Moti? Dragging myself up off the couch, I shuffled to the open door and looked out, shielding my eyes from the sunlight. If I was expecting an airport, I'd be sadly mistaken. From what I could see, we were on some kind of estate, and the jet had somehow landed on a long driveway. Crank came into view near a large house, his back to me. I climbed down the jet and started walking towards him. He must have heard my feet crunching the gravel beneath me because he turned around before I reached the house. Where are we? I asked. Russia, he grunted tersely. Thank you, but we're in Russia. I prodded, cranky from just waking up. On someone's private estate, about an hour from Moscow. Miss Montague has paid them to go on holiday, so they'll not bother us. I nodded. Not a bad idea. Returning back inside the jet, I shivered and grabbed my coat and shoes, figuring I should go find the group. I need to work out a plan of action. However, when I picked up my coat, I noticed immediately that something was missing. Moti was gone. I had to take a moment to let that sink in. Someone took Moti. Fine, Dolores, she probably took him. I nearly tripped and fell on my face when rushing out of the jet. Crank raised an eyebrow at me but didn't say anything. I ran into the house and whipped my head around to find Dolores. I heard her voice off to the left. Down the hall I found her and Dagger, pulling food from the cupboards, organising and making lists. I'll go see if Sleeping Beauty's awake, Dagger said before turning, and saw me. She nodded at me. Or you can find me. Where's Moti? I demanded, ignoring Dagger completely. Dolores frowned. You made your opinion on that matter perfectly clear, she sneered. I'll keep my motorcon and you keep yours. I'll just observe. And why is Moti missing? I asked, leaning on the counter. Dolores stood straight. What do you mean missing? She asked, flicking her hand to Dagger, who immediately left the room. I put Moti on charge on the jet and now it's not there. Missing. When? What? I asked, becoming enraged. When did you plug it in, and have you seen it since? She snapped angrily. I plugged Moti in after we had our group chat and figured out where everyone was going. I last talked to Moti when we were making our stop in China. Meaning anyone on the plane could have taken it. Damn, she swore. What do you mean? They're our friends. Don't be so fool-headed, she dismissed. We've come together to save our lives. It doesn't mean we're friends. Why would anyone take Moti? Why wouldn't they? She countered. We've all seen how unique your motorcon is. She ripped off the top page of the notepad she'd been writing on and started scribbling madly. Our suspects are those who were in transit with us, even those who got off at China, right? Right, I think, I murmured. It makes sense. I don't remember hearing Moti's voice before I slept. So you, me, Dagger, Crank, Petrus, Matron, and the Aetherites, including Wong and Satine, and the COGs, including Farrer and Chase, and your little friends, Etienne and Sharon. You put both of us on that list? I asked dryly, still not excluding her from my own mental list. No stone unturned, she muttered, not looking at me. There's not too many, over a dozen people. Shouldn't be too hard to track down. I thought about the behaviours of the people I've known and met on the plane. Doesn't Moti have a tracking device on it? She already said that she tracked us using Moti, which means she knows exactly where it is at all times. I don't believe ATM would do this. How sure are you about someone you've known for such a short time? She asked, staring at her list. We've been through a lot, I nodded, rubbing my hands together to warm them. He wouldn't do something like this without talking to me. After a long, hard stare, Dolores nodded and put a line through Etienne's name. I wouldn't believe it of Etienne, yet I made a mental note to get in contact with the other group in China as soon as I could to talk to him. Has anyone, Dolores asked, breaking my thought process. Has anyone what? I asked, confused. Asked for your motorcon? Apart from you, you mean? No, I said snidely, although... Sharon? Yes, Dolores prompted. Sharon wanted to use Moti to contact her daughter, I admitted. They've been separated for a while now. I see, Dolores muttered. It's not her. I'd sooner believe you stole Moti. Dolores sighed and set aside her notepad to look at me. Haven't you learned that I'm on your side yet? She asked, folding her arms. You'll forgive me if I don't always believe that, I retorted. And in any case, your lackeys Dagger and Crank aren't exactly my favourite people either. Dagger seems alright. They would never, she said, swiping her hand in a definite action. Why not? They work for the company. They work for me, she snapped, growling, and I trust them. All you have to do is trust me. Silence fell between us, and I swayed with indecision. Did I trust Dolores? She rolled her eyes, sensing my turmoil. We've worked together for years, she stoned. Yet you believe the Australian over me? I thought about it hard. It was true that Dolores had never let me down, despite our differences. Where is Sharon? She'll tell you herself she doesn't have Moti. Sharon, like Petrus, Farah, and Satine, took off as soon as we arrived. The others claimed they were setting up a meeting with their people, while Sharon just left. I let it go, arguing my point would get us nowhere. Who else is on that list? I asked wearily. Matron and Petrus are still on the list. Matron, of course, being in Beijing and Petrus here in Moscow. Well, we'll have to get communications running between all of us so we can figure it out, I murmured. Yes, she said dismissively. Then there's the two groups, Children of Gaia and the Etherites. I doubt we'll make any assumptions about them with the younger members in the picture, I sighed. Though, they were outside with me when we stopped in Beijing. You think that matters? She asked, raising an eyebrow. That would be the last time to swipe Moti, I nodded. Less people around, less caution needed. I stood up and started pacing. I knew it was because it was on my mind, but my wrist felt lighter, naked. Well, while Crank is refueling the jet and I'm setting up communications with our team in China, we need to get moving. Moving, I asked in confusion? Moving before the fueling? The data isn't going to collect itself, she scoffed. I've got to find Moti and Sharon first. She gave me another of her famous long hard stares. I think you're missing the bigger picture here, she warned. Pictures have many parts, I retorted. Follow me, she sighed, turning away. Maybe I can talk some sense in you. She led me outside and started walking towards what looked like a pool house. It was too small for a pool. I let myself fall behind her quick step and pulled out my phone. I had a hard time believing that my friends would take Moti from me, knowing how important it was, but I had to wonder. I scrolled through the contacts I had and paused at Etienne and Sharon's names. Call Sharon. She's the one who asked. It's more likely to be her. The line didn't even ring before going to a pre-recorded message and I hung up in frustration. Don't dawdle, Dagger called from the pool house-like structure. She gets pissed when you do. Sighing, I shoved my phone back into my front pocket and followed them inside. The building turned out to be an upmarket garage, with several cars parked against the wall. Dolores was standing on the other end when Crank and herself were arranging a desk. We'll find who stole Moti, Dagger murmured behind me, startling me. It's important to you, and we can't have you distracted. I was oddly touched by the gesture, even though I knew it was simply pragmatism for Dagger. Perhaps I was going soft. This is where we're most likely to be able to gather the information, Dolores called to me, pointing to a map. I walked over and saw she was pointing to the very middle of Moscow. That'll be easy, I muttered sarcastically. The government failing, people taking up arms, and chaos rife everywhere. You want to go to the most populated part of the city. You chose Russia, she reminded me pertly. Dagger is working on getting us floor plans. It's a government building after all. Dagger nodded from where she was sitting at a laptop before her phone started ringing. She stood and walked a distance away. Phone connection was back. I shoved my hands in my pockets and wondered if I should excuse myself to call my friends again. I know you don't like guns, so what is that? I pulled a piece of paper out of my pocket. Sharon's handwriting was on it. I blinked, puzzled. Why did Sharon leave me a note instead of telling me in person? Unless there was someone Sharon didn't trust on the plane. It's from Sharon. I don't know. Just trash, nothing important. It read, "Sorry mate, I had to leave. I have this friend, a hacker, the best in the country probably. I can't expose him to the rest of the group. To say that his death is wanted by many is an understatement. I'm turning off my burner cell. I'm okay, I just need to see him alone. As soon as I've talked to him I'd call, but until then stay safe please. Sharon." You're staring awfully hard at that trash, Crank drawled. Something you want to tell us? Not particularly, I shot back, putting the note back in my pocket. You sure? Dolores challenged. Sharon was chasing a lead, a dangerous one by the sound of it. I wasn't going to risk that. Of course I am. I rubbed my eyes wearily. My sleep on the plane hadn't seemed to do me any good. What were you saying about guns, I asked, trying to get back on track. You won't need one, she replied, passing me 3 black weapons. Tasers? I turned them over in my hands. Felt like a gun. Non-lethal, I know you like that, she said, judgment in her voice. There's only enough charge for 1 shot each. If you need to, bring the tasers back to Crank and he'll recharge them. This will help, thank you. Dagger walked back over to us, hanging up her phone. That was Petrus, she called, coming to stand next to me. He struck out with all of his contacts. They're either leaving the country or have already gone. So quickly? Dolores asked, frowning. Dagger nodded. He's on his way back now, but the situation is worse than we thought. He got caught in the middle of 2 gunfights since arriving in Moscow. Have we heard from Ferrer or Satine? I asked, standing straight. Maybe Russia was a bad idea. Not yet, Crank answered. I'll give him a call now, see if I can get through. We have to move fast, Dolores murmured, as Crank moved away with his phone. What about Sharon? She's on her own. She's your problem, not mine, Dolores scoffed. We have to move as soon as we have those floor plans. Fine, but then we have to find Sharon. Dolores raised an eyebrow in approval. Excellent. Then I have a job for you. Just like that? I asked as she handed me a set of car keys. Yes, you'll be on your own, but I'm sure you can handle it. I looked over at Crank and Dagger and thought maybe I was better off on my own. These 2 weren't exactly my favourite people. Dolores noticed my look and sighed, grabbing a bag and handing it to me. Passports and money, she explained, before I could look inside it. She gave me a high-powered camera and a map of central Moscow, with several red dots on it. Currently, there is no security weakness at the data center. Your job is to create one. The red dots are the tactically relevant structures we've identified. Power generators, security companies, that sort of thing. Surveil them and come up with a plan. She also handed me a folder that contained intelligence already collected by Dagger. I stared at it all and frowned. Alright, I'm going to need to do my own research first though. Back on the jet, I moved my tools and gadgets to the new bag Dolores had given me. I sat and stared at my tablet for a moment, thinking about the best course of action. Half an hour later, I had 7 pages of notes from looking at the various websites regarding my first target, the power company. If we were to cut the power to the facility, we'd be able to get it easier. But I wanted to know if we could cut the power only to the facility and not to the entire block. Sighing, I bundled it all up and added it to Dolores' folder. Crank stuck his head in the doorway, appearing bored. Moti wants to confirm that you still don't want a gun, so it's worth it if you ask me. What would have changed my opinion in the last hour? I asked, frowning. Prison system failure. They've lost control of a few prisons and hundreds of convicts have broken out. I groaned. Exactly what I needed. No, we don't need a gun, we're good. I went to the garage with the keys Dolores had given me in my hand. Looking over the dozen cars there, I frowned. I have no idea which one was mine, and pushing the unlock button on the remote did not produce a reaction. Rather than checking each car one by one, I backtracked and went looking for Dolores. Which car is mine? I asked once I found her in the kitchen. As she was chopping vegetables with gusto and didn't look up when I spoke. The Aston, she replied, swiping everything into a pot. And be back in time for dinner. I'm not sure I can... Be back in time for dinner, she repeated, an edge in her voice. I swallowed and nodded. The Aston was much fancier than anything I'd ever driven before. However, it was a manual car. My anxiety ratcheted up as I slid behind the wheel. This was stupid. I barely know how to drive stick. If Moti was here, Moti would be cautioning me against driving something so out of my league. You're some big spy guy and you can't even drive a frickin' manual? Come on. Drive the car, you big wimp. Swallowing my doubts, I put the keys in the ignition and started the engine. It roared as if I was hurting it, but Dagger and Crank both ignored me, so I assumed it was meant to be that loud. Trying to remember everything I'd learned as a teen, I put my hand on the shifter and put the car into drive. It made a horrible clunking noise. That means you have to put the clutch in, stupid. And that time Dagger and Crank did look up. Smiling sheepishly, I pressed on the gas. I drove the Aston straight into the garage door. Dolores gave me the keys to a little automatic shoebox that looked like a toy next to the racy vehicles around it. She gave me a very pointed look when she said it was the only one she trusted me with. At the end of the driveway, I pulled out the paper map Dolores had given me. and an old car GPS device I'd found in the house. Programmed the GPS. About an hour later, I admitted I was hopelessly lost. How can you be lost with a GPS on? After trying one system and failing, I tried the other and also failed. Now I was parked on the side of the road, staring at both the map and the GPS, trying to make sense of it. Thing was, if I believed what the GPS was telling me, then the map must be wrong. However, the map wasn't in English, so I couldn't confirm anything. Moti would have to be able to help me. Would be able to help me. For the first time since leaving America, I was completely on my own. And the more I stared at the GPS and the map, the more I realized I didn't even know how to get back to the jet in Dolores. Rumblings of another car announced itself somewhere down the road, the first one since I'd pulled over to the side 20 minutes ago. Burying my pride, I stuck out a hand to flag down the driver, hoping to ask for assistance. The car pulled up beside me and the driver's side window rolled down. "Hey, I'm sorry, do you know..." My words trailed off when I saw the impressive-looking submachine gun pointed at me. There were only 2 women in the car, but they meant business. Talk to them calmly. I put my hands up and calmly backed away. "I don't mean any harm," I said as steady as I could. "I'm just lost and looking for directions." I don't know if they knew English, so I picked up and pointed at my GPS for emphasis. The driver said something in Russian, and the passenger got out, moving towards me. I hesitated, the gun still trained on me. "If you could just show me where we are on this map," I asked, indicating to the hood, where it was spread. The passenger picked it up, and I sighed in relief, stepping toward her. Gun-toting driver shouted, and I didn't know Russian to know "get back" when I heard it. I realized what was happening when the second woman got in the car and started the engine. I'd left the keys in the ignition. Together they drove away, leaving me holding the GPS and my bag, which I had thankfully taken out of the car to eat a snack. Groaning, I started walking along the road, pocketing the GPS and shouldering my bag. I sent a quick text message to Dolores as I walked. "Lost. Car got stolen at gunpoint. I don't think we want to inform the police." My phone began ringing immediately. Oh man, we're gonna get in trouble for this one. I answered the call. "Dolores, Crank is picking you up," she said briskly. "He'll drive you from now on." She hung up the phone. Oh my god, I'm so incompetent. I wasn't sure how he found me, but Crank drove a snazzy sports car next to me while I was wandering aimlessly on the outskirts of Moscow. "I hear you need a driver," he muttered dryly. I groaned and climbed into the car, feeling like a petulant teenager who had just been caught sneaking out. "Where are we going?" he asked, looking over his sunglasses at me. "I don't even know where we are," I muttered, pulling out the GPS from my bag and switching it on. "Don't bother with that," he shook his head. "They don't work anymore." "How do you know?" He shrugged, driving aimlessly around. Dagger was researching something related to it. "She's got some kind of technical degree. I just follow orders." I tossed the GPS onto the back seat. It was useless now anyway. I told Crank where I was going, and he turned around without needing directions, speeding away. Rubbing at my wrist, I missed Moti keenly, but I realized how reliant I was on Moti's companionship and technology. Being without Moti felt like a hole in my life. I looked at Crank out of the corner of my eye. Could he have taken Moti? No. Why would he take Moti? Montague had me refuel the jet, he said. "I don't know if that means we're leaving." "I'm sure she'll let us know if we are," I said. He shrugged, as if it didn't matter, but his brow furrowed. "I noticed you dropped the Miss and Miss Montague," I noted, relaxing back as he drove. Crank snorted and waited for several moments before explaining. "It's not like she's my superior anymore," he said dismissively. "We don't work for her." "You're not getting paid to be ordered around?" I asked, surprised that Crank would go along with that. "She said we'd still get paid for another 2 months, he explained, though his tone indicated that he thought something different. "Dagger too, I'm assuming." "She's what's keeping me in this," he said honestly, glancing at me. "We've been a team for a long time." I can understand that. I rubbed my wrist again, missing Moti, my own partner. He swore under his breath suddenly. I looked around to see what the problem was. He was shaking his head. "I never thought I'd be one of these scumbags on the complications matrix," he explained. "All the fun happens on the complications matrix, it seems." Crank pulled up on the opposite side of the street to the power station, and I raised my camera. It didn't look like much. A cement building with barely any windows. The entire front side of the building didn't have a single window. "I'm going to take a walk around the block," I murmured to Crank, after taking a few photos. "Want me to come with you?" he asked, boredom clear in his voice. I might need a getaway car. I shook my head. I'll call you if I need you. He nodded and pulled out his phone, plugging in headphones to listen to music. I jumped out of the car and headed left to circle the building. There was only one entrance at the front, though perhaps the other sides had a window or back door I could use. I played the tourist and took photos of most things to be safe. There was no one around, but I figured better be safe than sorry. There was a chain link fence toward the back of the barbed wires on top. I approached the fence as close as I could without seeming too suspicious. The hum of a generator filled the air, and I took note of the pipes and grates on the outside of the building. As I was approaching the back of the fenced area, I heard something. Frowning, I slowed my steps, moving each foot with caution. Peeking around, I saw 3 men, obviously on break for security. Each had a rifle in their hands and a sidearm on their hip, and were dressed in bulletproof vests. I continued acting tourist. I kept walking along the fence, sadly taking a few photos from the hip, not to draw suspicion from the guards. It didn't work. Within moments, all the guards turned toward me and raised their guns, yelling at me in Russian. If Moti was around, I'd be informed of that these men were not friendly. I put up my hands and backed away, heading back to the car. I jumped back in the sports car inside, pulling the camera from around my neck. No luck, Crank asked, not removing his eyes from his phone. They got guards armed to the teeth, I muttered. We'd either have to go in with an army or go home. We could just blow it up, he asked, shrugging. I got a rocket launcher in the trunk. Why do you have it in the trunk? I asked, aghast. I don't know, might need it, he frowned defensively. What do you want to do next then? Let's check out the rest of the places on Dolores' list, I sighed, pulling out my research. See if they're all the same. They were. You sure you don't want the rocket launcher? Craig asked, as I slammed the passenger door shut as I got back in. Don't tempt me. All the guards are from the same company, I sighed, reeling in my own temper and pulling out the camera to look at the photos of the first guards. Government? Crank asked, looking over my shoulder. Private from what I can see. I squinted at the photos, specifically at the guards' uniforms. There were tree logos on their chests. If I can make out what it is, that'll be our next target. You don't want to take on the places they're protecting, but you want to knock down their house, he asked, starting the engine. Might be the way to do it, I sighed. I like the way you think. Where are we going? Cafe, I muttered. I need a phone book or something. Crank looked out of place at the diner we found on the other side of Moscow. The waiter asked if he'd like another coffee, and he nodded stoically. Not enjoying the decor, I asked, a grin on my face. It's pink with frilly sides, he muttered, pushing a doily out of his way. I love it. His voice was dripping with sarcasm. I chuckled, turning the page of the phone registry I'd found. Can't you just look it up? He won't. I need to find the tree logo, I muttered, showing him the camera again. I can't make out text, unless you want to call Dolores. He grunted grumpily. We don't need her for everything. My thoughts exactly. He muttered and shifted uncomfortably in the seat. Found it, I said happily, showing Crank the entry in the phone book. Can't pronounce the security company's name, but it has the address and everything on it. Ready to go? Hell yeah, he muttered, standing quickly. I was starting to act like the brutish ape. I was starting to like the brutish ape. The compound was on the outskirts of Moscow, in the opposite direction to where Dolores and Dagger were set up. It looked like a military installation, complete with barbed wire fencing and patrolling guards. Luckily for us, it was the bottom of a small incline, so we were set up at the top of the hill and tried to see what we could. That seems like a security flaw. I'm telling you, one quick rocket, Crank murmured. Shh, I don't want to kill anyone if I can avoid it, I frowned. If we're going to use that thing, it's going to be carefully. Sure, careful, I'm real careful, he sighed, strolling away from the car. When he was out of earshot, I picked up my phone and called Dolores. Got anything worthwhile? She asked without greeting. No, I've been sitting on my thumbs. Don't be smart, she scoffed. What's happening? How angry would you be if Crank fired a rocket launcher, I asked, my brain moving into a plan. Very, she said dryly. What are you thinking? It seems that most of the buildings on my list have been guarded by people from the same private company. I've summed it up. So you were to kill them? That's not like you, she noted calmly. I don't want to kill them. So you're right about that, I scoffed. Crank and I are outside the security company's compound. Take out the head, she asked. Look, will you let me finish talking instead of asking me questions every 10 seconds? I snapped in frustration. I'm sorry, Your Highness, as you were, she hissed back. I sighed. It was never good to annoy Dolores when I needed her. I'm going to blow up the central building. That hopefully won't have too many people inside. What good will that... Seriously? She cleared her throat and stayed silent. Hopefully they'll take it as an attack and call back the bulk of their forces, I said through clenched teeth. She kept silent. I'll take that as permission. There'll be chatter on whatever they're using to communicate, I continued. See if you can pick up some of it. I'll cover it and let you know if they suspect you, she agreed. And if they don't take the bait, I added. Could be they're smarter than me. That, she said, wouldn't be hard. She hung up the phone. Crane came back over to my side, raising an eyebrow and a question. See that clock tower behind us, I asked, pointing. He nodded without a hint of sarcasm. From inside it, do you think you can hit the base of the tallest building to the left from it? He grinned, showing all his teeth. Oh, I can hit something. I waited as he picked up the rocket launcher and sneaked into the clock tower. Hopefully there weren't too many people inside to notice him carrying a giant gun. If I was right, the tallest building would be a sentry, and have at most one person in it who would probably survive as long as Crank hit the base. Hopefully. Suddenly a rocket cracked off with an almighty whistle and shot toward the compound. We gotta watch that shit. I winced as I watched the huge fiery explosion that started from the base of the tower, and the next moment the tall structure crumpled to the ground, kicking a thick debris cloud into the air. Men ran from all over, yelling names, more than one name. Time to go, Crank yelled, a joyful look on his face, running around to the car. Behind him, sirens started blaring at the compound, and I swore. I dove into the passenger seat and buckled the seatbelt. Crank performed an illegal U-turn and blasted back down the street, ignoring the shouting behind us. He laughed maniacally and I closed my eyes. I prefer Sharon's driving. They both drive like loonies. When we finally slowed down, I opened my eyes, surprised to see us back at the estate where Dolores and the jet were. That was quick, I noted, looking around to see if anyone was following us. I'm the best, Crank shrugged. Dolores met us outside the open jet, arms folded. That seemed to do it, she said. I've been monitoring the bandwidth they use. And they're mostly being called back. Excellent, I said, passing by her to climb into the jet. At least I wouldn't have to worry about getting a hotel room. Are we leaving Montague? Crank asked outside. No, but not by choice, she answered. The jet's been compromised. And with that, we need to wrap this episode up because we're out of time for today. But it sounds like we're going to try and get out of Russia now. All we have to do is blow a thing up. Cool. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.